gotta love that Oaklander. Wanna see that Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Piece of heaven with our new exit on 287. We can be seen on channel 20. That's our TV. Oaklander, gotta love that Oaklander. Wanna see that Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. Oaklander, Oaklander, Oakland TV. I love it. Catch our balls.
Good evening, I'm Al DiGiacomo, your host for the Oaklander. I met our first guest backstage before his performance at the Ramapo Mountain Folk Festival in August of 1996. He had just received the New Jersey Country Music Association nominee for Best Songwriter for 1996. I'm talking about none other than Oakland's own Tom Spengler. And tonight, Tom has brought members of Circle's End, Barry Weisenfeld on bass and John Hargraves on guitar. So I'm glad you're watching, and I'm glad that you guys are here with us tonight.
Pleasure to be here.
So Tom, you're a lifelong resident here.
Yes, I've lived in Oakland since 1950. Attended the schools from kindergarten all the way through Indian Hills.
And you take a lot of your hometown wisdom into your music, Tom?
Well, to a certain extent, I guess it can't help but affect the person that you've grown up to be, you know, where you grew up. And I live here now, having the choice of where to live. I raised my children here in the town, so I think it's a great place, you know.
Where did you...
I don't want to become a salesman for Oakland, but good place to live.
All right. Where'd you meet the rest of your band here?
Well, actually, Barry and I have played together going back about 5 or 6 years now, in various bands, playing in the New York, New Jersey area, Long Island for weddings, corporate parties, things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And we've all been involved in songwriting and playing original music. And we met John at a local place called the Barnyard Inn in Totowa, where the New Jersey Country Music Association holds their songwriters get together once a month. And John had gotten up and performed, and I was waiting to perform, and I sat back and said, wow, this guy's a great songwriter. We have to get together, and that's how it evolved.
Well,
I got together with John, and then I said, I got to introduce you to Barry, and here we are.
It all seemed to click.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
very similar backgrounds.
Right, right. Well, I know one of your songs that you performed at the folk festival a few years back was Small Town Days.
Yeah.
And you think we can get a little taste of that right now?
Sure. This one was definitely written about It was written when 287 was being built.
Just a dream in somebody's eye.
Memories of my hometown, tree-lined streets and dirt roads, a country store and a soda shop, with comic books and baseball cards. The days were slow and lazy, swimming in the river and climbing the mountain with some friends, find out where the creek would end. Thinking back on those small town days, with 30 years of progress, there's come so many changes that if my daddy were alive, this place he wouldn't recognize. They're tearing down the mountain and bringing through the highway, putting up stores and Burger Kings and all of those convenient things. Say goodbye to those small town days. Small town days, are they just a memory? Small town days running through my mind. You can't go back, 'cause they're gone forever. Had to leave them all behind. The small town days. The city's moving closer. Feel the pressure building. You have to drive out 50 miles before you see those small town smiles and all the simple pleasures that make up childhood memories have all vanished with the years to be replaced by grown-up fears. Say goodbye to a small town days. Well, my boys asked me what it was like growing up here when I was young. Wish I could show them how it was, how small town boys had fun. Thinking back on those small town days. Small town days, are they just a memory? Small town days running through my mind. You can't go back, 'cause they're gone forever. Had to leave them all behind. Small town days, are they just a memory? Small town days running through my mind. You can't go back, 'cause they're gone forever. Had to leave them all behind. The small town days.
Splendid, gentlemen, splendid. Well, that really does set an old-time feeling back here, you know. You had mentioned that you remember a couple of buildings in that sign, don't you,
Well,
Tom?
actually, the one building everybody knows has got new siding on it now, but it's the dentist office. And it used to be the Wigwam when I was in high school, and that was the local hangout. for
Carmine
everyone.
Parenti.
It was like anybody who remembers Archie and Jughead comics, Pop Tates. The Wigwam was Pop Tates, and everybody after school would go down there and hang out. It's very neat.
So you spent a long time climbing up on mountaintops and doing all the kind of things that kids did long
Yeah.
ago, huh?
Now everybody climbs up there. That same mountain with the lake up there where everybody parks their car and hikes. People come from all around. It's now a Bergen County park, I believe. But that lake there, I used to fish in when I was about 10 years old and received a few rides in the local police car because the owner of the lake at the time didn't like people fishing on his lake. So,
Very nice of him to have the police drive you home.
yeah, it was. It was a long walk.
That's great. Now, John, you've had quite a career songwriting, and you had some bands that have stretched far and wide. Why don't you tell us a little about your history as a musician?
I come from a pretty varied background. Started out actually as a bass player, and what happened was everybody said, "You have to sing, John," and I couldn't play the bass and sing to save my life, so I ended up playing the guitar. And actually, I've spent most of my life working with church music. I'm a choir director. I've done that since approximately about 1976. I've worked as a choir director. And except my choirs aren't your traditional church choir. My choirs use guitars and synthesizers and percussion and the whole
How many
routine.
pieces does that incorporate?
We run with about 23 people right now. Only about 3 instruments at this point, but 23 voices all told.
And where are you based at?
St. Pius Church in Montville, New Jersey.
Great,
And
great.
keeps me busy and keeps me out of trouble.
How about you, Barry? Where have your musical trails led you?
Well, a number of instruments. I found the bass actually in my teens, which was about 6 years ago, and fell in love with it right away. I do also play other instruments, and I've done a number of jobs with various orchestras in New York, classical, with the double bass, which you'll all hear later. And with a number of acts, I've played Carnegie Hall and Garden State Art Center, when it used to be called the Garden State Art Center, Westbury Music Fair, etc. New York City based, but toured North and South America with various people.
Great. Now, did John and Barry also perform with Nashville in My Heart?
No, actually, Nashville in My Heart is a different band. It's a band called Northfield.
Okay.
But none of those members are here this evening, so
I see.
it's a totally different thing. This is more of an acoustic style of music, and Northfield is with drums and keyboards, and it's more of a along the lines of an Eagles type band. More electric guitars and things of that nature.
Do you stay basically in that country music vein?
Pretty much, yeah. Well, this actually couldn't be considered purely country music. It's kind of a cross between folk music and country music, and we don't really set any boundaries on
Sure.
it. We just kind of write songs, and if we all like them, we play them.
Well, folk music seems to be making a resurgence lately
big time.
again.
Big time.
Do you play in New York at all, or?
Yeah, actually, we play quite a bit in New York with various ensembles, but this group may have an upcoming date at Denim and Diamonds, which is in New York. Used to be the old Playboy Club, as a matter of fact.
And you guys just opened for Rick Danko at Boodles, didn't you?
That's right. That's New York State.
Great
up there
place.
in
Right, upstate.
Chester, New York, up by Barry's,
My
territory
woods,
up
my
there.
haunts.
where the Bears live.
Well, listen, I think John, you were telling me about you had a situation that you had a few more members inside the band, and sometimes out of a kind of a ticklish situation, you get a beautiful song out of it.
It's a very interesting thing the way that works. Sometimes things just happen to work themselves out. We go different ways in life, and as it worked out, we originally had a couple of girls who worked with us who, we're still all very good friends with, thank God. And we had a couple other members too. And what has happened is essentially the direction of the group just kind of we went in the same direction, and everybody else was floating somewhere else, God knows where. And we did come up with a song out of that, and which is called "Love Comes Back Around."
Well, how about bringing that one back around?
We certainly could do that.
Bobby stood in the driveway with his bags beside his feet. Took one last look at the world, he knew the years of memory. His daddy said, son, your dreams are out there, waiting to be found. Go on and chase your rainbow, love comes back around. When love comes back around, circle's end is where it starts. Leaving is the hardest part. But when we listen to our hearts, then love comes back around. Chattanooga to Jackson, and Detroit to New Orleans. He worked the land as a hired hand down in Amarillo. Reminisced of the girl he missed back in his hometown. The warmth of friends and family, how he wished he was there now. where it starts. Leaving is the hardest part. But when we listen to our hearts, when love comes back around, the stars were only half as bright as in the dreams he dreamed. The grass that Bobby walked upon was never quite as green. He found out in his wanderings he didn't need to travel far. The sweetest things in life were in his own backyard. When love comes back around, love comes back around. Circles end is where it starts. Leaving is the hardest part. But when we listen to our hearts, when love comes back around, love comes back around, love comes back around. Bobby stood in the driveway.
That was beautiful, guys. That was really beautiful, and I can tell that there was a real life story behind that. You know, John, when you're singing that, does time stand still for you?
I don't think time is even there.
You know, I could just see that you're.
It's a total, it's a space. It's a beautiful space.
Good
That's all I
answer.
can describe it to. It's a
good
beautiful space.
Well, I can see it.
Yeah.
It does show up. Now I can tell in the line of the song there, "Circles End." Is that how
Yes.
you came up with the name there?
From whence it came.
Before we go to the break, I just wanted to. What was the craziest name you ever had for a band?
To be broadcast on the show, you really want us to state
This
it
is
here?
a
This is a
family
family show now,
Right,
Barry.
well, then I pass. Family show.
I had one called Atomic Watermelon back in my old days.
Atomic Watermelon. I'd say the funniest name was Armadillo. It was very short-lived, but I must admit to it.
Well, great, guys. I think it's about time that we hit a break and do a couple of public service messages. So we're going to be taking a break for a spell. And how about playing a little trailer music as we head out
Why
to
not?
the break
You got
here?
2, 3, 4.
Good afternoon, officer. My license and registration. Cheeseburger? It's hot out today, huh, officer? Maybe my tail lights out.
Shouldn't you be
carpooling? I guess you're right.
I guess I am.
Carpooling can save up to 600,000 gallons of gas a year. This message sponsored by Ad Council and Earthshare.
Welcome back to the program, and we're here with Tom Spengler and John Hargraves and Barry Weisenfeld of Circles End. Tom, tell us a little bit about some of the musicians you used to pal around with, say, a good 25 years ago when Oakland had its heyday.
Well, about 25 years ago, maybe a little bit more, Oakland had a number of dance clubs. One being Pleasureland, which is now that abandoned area that people drive past and probably wonder about. But they had a pretty nice pavilion there, and they used to bring in name acts, the Shangri-Las, Bobby Fuller 4, the Turtles, bands that were popular back in the 60s. And we were a normal regulars. We used to play there all the time. So whenever the name acts came in, we would always, beg to be the opening act for them. And so we got a chance to play and open up for a number of really great groups.
You were just a local band that,
yeah, we were a
played
local
in the
band.
area, and you'd knock on the...
And actually, our friends were the ones responsible for putting together this whole concert thing. It was the Explorer Scouts that first started it, the Explorer Scouts of Oakland.
Really?
And it took off so well. I mean, it just was amazing that the owners of Pleasureland said, well, I don't know. I think we're going to have to just take over here, because they had like 3,000 kids on Friday night. It was amazing. And then Muller's Park right next door had a very similar thing, and they had even more space. And they brought in groups like the Association and Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs, and a lot of great concerts happening right in town.
And what were you playing? What was the type of music that you were playing back then?
Well, we were playing original music. I had a band called the Ever Lovin', which was a pretty popular band in the area at the time. We were high school students, and we were playing a lot of covers. But we had original music. But we were doing Birds, Doors, Vanilla Fudge. Later on, we actually opened up for the Vanilla Fudge, at one of those concerts.
And you're just a teenager, maybe 20 at this point? Or?
No, not even 20. Probably about 17 or 18.
That must have been quite a feat, being that young and opening up for bands that were shaping an entire culture back then.
Oh yeah, it was just a great time musically. I mean, because if you think about it, at that time, the Beatles were really in the forefront of the music at that time.
Sure.
And every single, you kind of like gauged as time went by when the next Beatle album would come out, and people would line up to actually buy these albums, and each one that came out was like a progression. It went someplace. It wasn't like the last album. It actually was, you could see progress there, and it was different, and it was evolving constantly, and everybody was trying to keep up with them. So
Sure.
The Beach Boys and the Rolling Stones and all these other groups would try to, they were kind of in competition with them. So, everybody was forced to be fantastic, because they were all, trying to keep up with the Beatles.
And everything comes and everything goes, right? And I'm sure that there's people in your past that just keep on coming back in song forms, which brings us to another song. What about that song you guys had done the other day, Emily?
That's a pretty song.
Oh, appreciate that. Emily is, I guess one of a million songs, but about relationships ending. It's a special one to me because it is really the type of piece of music that I tried to paint a picture rather than just say it straight out. And I think it comes out pretty interesting. Just have to listen. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Sighing songless grand piano gathers dust on easily. You are gone, yet still the sweetness lingers. while still the song goes on, and the hours turn like pages of a well-thumbed magazine, and I read your love into the story of all the things that might have been, all the things that might have been.
Splendid, gentlemen. Emily, Circle's End. Barry, that's an interesting upright bass that you're playing. Why don't you tell us a little bit how you make the transition from playing the upright to the electric?
Actually, it started in the other direction. I was playing keyboards for a long time, hauling around, as I recall, an old Farfisa organ, which dates me somewhat, and amplification. And I decided at one point that I wanted an instrument I could just throw over my shoulder and go someplace to a job with. And then I picked up the Fender, the electric bass. And after I realized that I think I was meant to be a bass player, I decided to cover as many basses, no pun intended, as I could. So I play pretty much everything that covers that register except tuba. And this was in that progression. It came along shortly after the electric.
Oh, the blend in Emily was marvelous. The mandolin, the upright bass, and that strange Washburn guitar that you're playing there, John,
that is,
you know? That's kind of wild, you know? And so you get into something that's very, very deep in things, and then all of a sudden you pop and do something lively. Is that how it normally goes? You usually work a crowd that way, and when you're out playing?
Yes, pretty much.
It's a matter of reading the crowd, and you do, when you design a show set, you do design certain contours into it, controlling as well as possible the energy levels.
How long does it usually take to write and get a song together like that, John?
The writing depends. I think Tom will tell you the same thing, and Barry's worked with a lot of writing too. Writing really depends. Sometimes you can put a song out in as short as 20 minutes.
Yeah, it's magic.
And it's like magic. It just pours from your lips as if it was a gift from above. And other times it's a process of working it, and it can take a lot more time. Now, putting it together instrumentally and arranging it, takes more time. That's a lot of practices, and it's even hard to set a limit on that. Whatever makes it work when the magic
We still
appears.
change the songs.
Yeah,
as
always.
we go
Yeah,
along. They evolve.
It is an evolution, not unlike, I think, can I make an analogy of us to the Beatles in one bizarre way? Oh my goodness.
I don't think so.
No,
but
I don't
try.
think so. All right, well, I'll plunge ahead.
Okay.
It's not a qualitative comparison. Things do get stale. And in fact, if you follow the career of James Taylor, for instance, he does Sweet Baby James differently, subtly differently, but differently than he did 20 years ago.
He has to please the crowd. He has to please
He
the
must
people.
please the crowd,
Yes,
but he cannot
sure.
fall asleep while doing it, and that's the mutual goal.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Well, listen, we're just about getting out of time here. Probably room for one more. How about we kind of rock the Oaklander viewing area with something from the Ramapo Mountains. This one is we're getting ready with Barry here. Get ready to do what was this? Mountaintop, guys?
Mountaintop.
All right. I want to thank you guys for coming down tonight and really entertaining the folks at home here. So, y'all set?
Indeed.
Hit it, guys.
One night when the moon was sinking low, I awoke and decided I would go up on the mountaintop, not to watch the sunrise up on the mountaintop. Got dressed, hopped into my car, high beams slicing through the dark up on that winding road. What a spot for the mood I'm in. Mountain top, I'll be there when the sun comes up and the world begins anew up on the mountain top. Parked my car, found my favorite rock. I heard a voice and it put me right in shock. 'Cause when I turned around, the prettiest girl I'd ever seen was sitting on the ground. She said, boy, you're almost late. And I said, girl, this must be fate. And then we talked a while, and we watched the sunrise up on the mountaintop. Mountaintop, I wanna watch the day begin. Mountaintop, what a spot for the mood I'm in. Mountaintop, she was there when the sun came up, and our love began that day up on the mountaintop. Sunset, day had come and gone, but I knew the night would hold more fun. And then we walked a while, hand in hand, down from the mountaintop. Mountaintop, gonna watch the day begin. Mountaintop, what a spot for the mood I'm in. Mountaintop, she was there when the sun came up, and our love began that day up on the mountaintop. Gonna watch the day begin. Mountaintop, what a spot for the mood I'm in. Mountaintop, I'll be there when the sun comes up, and the world begins anew up on the mountaintop.
Right. I'd like to thank Circle's End, Tom Spengler on guitar and mandolin, John Hargraves, and Barry Weisenfeld on bass here. And we want to invite you to stay with us because we'll be back with Franklin Lake sculptor Brian Beira after these messages. Hit it, guys.
Math, a four-letter word, right? Hey, you don't need that.
Why design the world's newest chips?
When you could be flipping the world's oldest burgers. Hey, wait a minute. This is math. Geometry, algebra.
No pocket protectors here.
But you're cruising without math. Yeah, right. Take a good look.
That's math staring back at you.
It's not a problem, man. It's an answer. Call NACME. We'll tell you what you need to do.
Welcome back to the Oaklander. Have you ever had the feeling that you had to travel somewhere or experienced the calling deep within you to act upon those urges? I'm with Brian Beira, a young sculptor from Franklin Lakes who had the opportunity to pursue his craft, transforming blocks of wood with a hammer and chisel into life-size statues of legendary sports heroes. Thank you so much for letting our viewers see your magnificent work, Brian. And I see that we're in the company of number 5 of the New York Yankees, Joe DiMaggio.
Yes, this is my latest life-size statue, and recently completed.
Where does one begin to approach carving a wooden statue of a in these life-size dimensions?
I start with a guide photo of the pose that I think is the nicest, and I use myself as a model because I'm basically the same size as DiMaggio, and just piece by piece.
What would happen if you had a statue or approaching something that was somewhat smaller, somewhat larger than yourself? How would you approach that?
You mean under life size?
Yes.
Basically the same way, but just making an allowance for each proportion to be proportionally smaller. You know?
And where does one begin? Obviously, this is not one large piece of wood.
Right.
So how would one begin to piece these things together?
It's not one piece of wood. This particular statue is about 60 or 70 pieces of wood laminated together, which just means glued. You couldn't get a piece of wood this large. It'd be too heavy, it'd be too expensive, and it would have a lot of natural flaws in the wood that we don't want. So we glue up stock that is a couple of inches wide. That's probably the largest piece of wood in the statue is something like this.
Now that's not regular type of wood that you would build a house with, would it? Is that specially dried?
It's air dried, and it's not cheap, and it makes a nice carving wood.
What types of glues do you use? Use a resin glue?
Regular Elmer's carpenter's glue.
And that would give it...
Very strong.
Really? And hold up for years and years? Archival almost?
Yep.
That's great. Let's talk about how you got started in this. Did you go to school, a wood carving school, to become so proficient?
No school. I did have some drawing lessons in high school, but that's it. I'm completely self-taught, and the entire thing started back in 1989 when my father got one of these Dremel grinders for Christmas, and I came home from college on a break, and I started to play with it, picking up scraps of wood to see, you know, what I could do with it. And very quickly, I turned out a large buffalo nickel.
Boy, look at that. That's wonderful.
I found that it was very relaxing. I enjoyed it, and I also found out that I was good at it. I don't know why, but it just seemed easy. And, you know, naturally I went on to do other knickknacks, and then that led to the big guys.
And what type of wood? This is also pine, both the statues,
right.
and this is pine wood.
Yeah, you want to use a softwood. You don't want to use a maple or an oak. It's too labor intensive.
And this is your very first project here.
Right.
Where did that lead you?
Well, like I said, other relief work, and then I started to do duck decoys, and it led to a cigar store Indian type figure. And while I was doing this figure, it just occurred to me to do a life-size piece. Partially because I didn't care for the detail work. And I thought, well, I'll do a large Indian. And then I thought, that's a cliche. There's a lot of cigar store Indians around. Let's do something that's unique. Let's do a baseball player. So I tackled the Babe Ruth project because I really enjoy baseball.
Now, I see you've got some tools here. You've got a hammer and a chisel. And it's not a regular, I said it's a regular looking chisel, but what about your mallet there?
Well, this is a mallet that, since it's not like a hammer, and it has no direction to it, you don't have to look at it. You can keep your eyes on the work. So I know I'm hitting it no matter how it's turned.
I see. And what's the weight on that? Is there a special weight to give you a certain amount of inertia?
Sure, they make them in various weights. If you were using stone, they'd be, you know, very hefty, but whatever you're comfortable with.
Maybe you can give us a little demonstration on your little block of wood there.
I don't know if you can see, but just go with the grain. And
that's fun.
Chips come off pretty easily.
That's great. Now, how would one approach getting some of the detail, or do you use other things? I mean, do you start with a large block of wood and just sit there for hours at a time, just chiseling off little pieces, or do you rough it with other tools before you get down to the rough shape?
The first tool I would use would be an electric chainsaw. And I didn't use that in the beginning, but I learned as I went that was the fastest way to remove wood. After the electric chainsaw comes a lot of chiseling, and then when you get down to where the chisel is not helpful, you use a die grinder, which is a tool that spins, and I can put different bits in here, sandpaper bits, metal bits, stone bits, for different kinds of grinding purposes, different shapes to get into angles. And then as you work down, smaller details, smaller grinder, and then at the very end, you're using a wood burner, which has different tips you're able to put in here. And you can burn in, you know, fine lines in In skin, for instance, all this is wood burn, these hand lines. I mean, this piece is obviously not done, but that's to give you an idea of what you would do with the wood burner.
At the end, do you use large amounts of sandpaper? How do you get the textures to the, is that what you use, the Dremel tool, to get into the small areas of the sock, the seam work, the belt loops?
There's a limit to what the little Dremel tool can do, and at the very end, it's hours and hours of hand sandpapering, and I sand to where my fingernails, you know, feel it. It's boring, but you have to do it.
Now, let's say you're working on the leg, or a place where you obviously took off a little bit too much wood or something. What is the technique to repairing it to get it back to where you, as the artist, are satisfied that it all flows?
It doesn't happen as often as you would think, and it didn't. I expected it to happen more. You can do two things. You can make an allowance for it with the rest of the piece that's not damaged, if you have room. If you don't have room, you need to create a surface and made a piece of wood, glue it on, and start over. Since I'm painting the figures, that's possible. If I was doing a natural finish like this piece, that's not possible.
Right.
You have to start over or completely allow for it.
Taking out down another...
Change the design of what you're doing to incorporate the piece you took that doesn't work.
Now, also, I see that you paint the statues. Any formal training in painting, or?
No, I went down to the art store, I bought paints and brushes, and I experimented with them, and the painting that has to be done on a statue like this is not too difficult. The hardest parts are the skin, in which case I'm using an airbrush, which is basically a controlled spray paint situation.
Now, how long would a statue like this take you to do?
This one would be about 700 hours, 750 hours, somewhere in that neighborhood.
In the area of how, in a matter of months, how long would 700 hours take?
If you have a day job, which I did for many of the projects, it could take 18 months to find that much time to work. When I worked just at carving, I could knock a piece like that out in 4.5 months, 5 months.
So at the time when you were doing some of these statues, now you've done one of Babe Ruth and also of Mickey Mantle.
Right.
That we'll be seeing in a little bit. Were you doing that along with a day job?
Right. For Babe Ruth, I was. For Mantle and DiMaggio, I concentrated solely on carving.
Very, very interesting. What fills your mind when you're working on a statue with these long hours?
Your mind wanders, because a lot of times it's very menial work, a lot of grunt work. The piece develops very slowly. There are times when you need to think, but generally you're just you're sanding and it takes a long time. So you have the radio on, you have the television, whatever. Just some kind of noise or distraction to pass the time.
I also see that you're working on a bust in the back there. What would you say is the stage that you're in on that there?
This piece, I'm only into it about 10 hours, between 5 and 10 hours, and to finish something like that, 40, 45 hours would be required.
Again, that's several blocks of wood glued together?
3 pieces glued together. Right.
So you started off in which high school? You're a local boy around here too, right?
Indian Hills.
That's great. Did you you said you took some art classes?
Right.
When you were in high school?
John Osborne was the art teacher, I think 9th and 10th grade.
Do you plan to take this any further, Brian?
The carving, I would hope that I would continue to do it. The problem for me is I enjoy doing the big projects which take the large amounts of time, and with a career in accounting, I don't know where that time is going to come from. I can always make knickknacks and small items to satisfy my urge to do it, but ideally I'd like to down the road do the big pieces again. I just can't see where the time is going to come from right now.
This was just something where you were working and you just felt that you just had to accomplish such a dynamic project. How was that urge? Was it overwhelming?
Yeah, I get pretty intense about something when I start, and I felt like it was something that I thought I could tackle, and I learned by doing it, and one thing led to another, and before I knew it, I was attempting this large project,
Okay, Brian, let's break for a moment. When we return, I'd like to talk about your first life-size project, Babe Ruth. So we'll return after these words. Please stay with us.
I'm learning to carve using basic carving techniques. It's just a blank piece of wood with nothing on it, no flaws or anything, and then you start carving and working with it, and it turns into something beautiful. My great-great-grandfather, he was a tinner. My grandpa carved a lot of things, and my uncle, he's a wood carver. I think it's really important to learn every aspect of your culture, every part of it, and give it back, put it back into the culture and teach somebody else.
Welcome back to the program. I'm here with Franklin Lake sculptor Brian Beira, and as you can see, we're in the company of number 7 of the New York Yankees, Mickey Mantle. Brian, what is special about the Mickey Mantle statue in regards to your life?
Well, when I started carving the Mantle statue was a few years back, and I fully expected that when I finished it, I would somehow get to meet Mickey Mantle, either by taking it to the restaurant in New York City or just in some way that would happen, and that would be a fun thing. Unfortunately, over the 18-month period it took for me to carve this, Mickey Mantle passed away. But an interesting thing developed out of that. My brother needed at the time a pancreas transplant as a result of juvenile diabetes. And when he got on a list to receive the transplant, he asked them, how long should this take? And they said, it'll take about a year for you to get one, opportunity. And this was right around the time that Mickey had passed away, and he raised a lot of publicity was generated towards organ donation.
Yes.
And my brother received about, I think, 3 or 4 calls in the first 4 or 5 weeks. And he said, this is, they weren't proper matches, or he couldn't get out there in time. It was in Minnesota. But he asked them, hey, you told me it was going to take a year. Why have all these, organs been available? And they said, Mickey Mantle. So that's kind of a nice connection.
So in his passing, more people were able to...
Absolutely. And, my brother is living proof.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, let's talk a little bit about your inspirations and how you get to do your research and things like that. You spend a lot of time up in Cooperstown, New York.
Absolutely. Research is a big item. Before I can start a piece, I have to know not only what shape or what pose I want, I have to have photographs, especially of the face, because I'm carving a face from photographs. I need all different angles. I need to know the details of the uniforms. And for instance, this is a 1956 Yankees home uniform. Where were the belt loops? Was there 2 on one side or 1 on the other? I have to know where the seams fell. So I go up to Cooperstown in the case of Mantle, and I look at the original Mantle uniforms they have up there. And the baseball library at the museum has a photo graveyard, and you can look through the photos and you can have prints made. So I've been up there a couple of times to do research. Invaluable.
Okay, so I see that this is one of the pictures that you worked on with Babe Ruth here, and this is how you work in some of your scales.
This is the guide photo I used to do my Ruth statue. The Ruth statue is not here, but we'll see pictures of it. Basically, the first thing I want to do is get some proportions down. As you can see, I made some notes at how high the different things fell. Just to give me an idea. So that's how it starts, with one photo. But like I said, when I do the face, I need as many photos as possible, and I even look at video.
Really? I also see that you have somewhat of a melange of your own hands there. What's the significance in that, Brian?
Well, going back to Mantle, while doing the hands, which is tricky, hands really there's a lot of detail in hands, and I had a lot of problems with how they sit on the bat, because when I would hold a bat in my hands and look, then I had to put everything down and pick up the chisel or the die grinder, and it was a tedious process. So I thought this would be great if I had a model of my hands. So I molded my own hands out of plaster to work from, and it worked pretty well. And this is the model. So that sped up the process.
That's great. And what did you learn from the three statues? We've seen Joe DiMaggio, we've seen Mickey Mantle. What were the differences in working with the three statues of Ruth, Mantle, and DiMaggio?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind when you mention that is I had to make sure that whatever I carved in here could fit out the door, which it sounds funny, but can you imagine if I didn't plan that right? In the case of Mantle, for ease of transportation to taking him to different shows and whatnot, I made him come apart. So that was a tricky thing, to have it so that it disassembles and assembles quickly.
Brian, have you been approached by museums to display your work?
Yes, this statue here was at Mickey Mantle's restaurant on Central Park South. Last year, for about 6 months, they had it on display. And I have interest from the All-Star Cafe in New York City at 45th and Broadway for displaying Joe DiMaggio.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Are you a big Yankee fan?
Actually, I'm a Met fan.
No kidding.
Yeah. I just figured that these are the legends people want to see. They don't want to see Rusty Staub and Keith Hernandez, per se.
I see. Do you have any plans for your next work?
Possibly a Frank Sinatra. I've had some interest in Sinatra. Yastrzemski. I've had interest in Michael Jordan, naturally, Tiger Woods. Just have to see what pans out.
That's wonderful, Brian. I wish you a lot of luck in your endeavors here. It's a wonderful, wonderful work, and hopefully maybe something will be around town where people would be able to maybe come into the municipal hall or something like that and see it. I think it'd be wonderful for people to see in the flesh or the wood, so to speak. So, Brian, I want to thank you for being on our show, and good luck to you in the future. And I'd like to also thank our mutual friend and barber, Paul Diorio, for introducing me to Brian, and we can actually showcase your work with our viewers. So with that, Brian, what do you say we go out to the ball game?
Let's go.
I'd like to again thank our viewers for informing and entertaining us this evening, and hope that it will encourage others to showcase their talent here with our Access viewers. And for those who may be interested in learning how to produce Access Television by joining the OKTV team by taking the course taught by qualified TCI professionals. So don't delay. Call us now for all the details. Also a reminder to tune in to our latest edition of the OKTV's team, Alternatives. This month, we have a special computer-animated 3D video titled Escape to or from Catatonia by Steve Spear, whose work has been acclaimed by many in Hollywood. The music score has been handled by our newest resident composer-musician, Sal Riggi. So tune in Sundays at 7 p.m. to TCI TV 20. And from all of us at the Oaklander, I'm Al DiGiacomo, and thank you for watching. And Dad, have a happy 75th birthday. I love you, man.